Hello, everyone. Welcome to Armstrong in the Loop podcast. I'm your host, Seth Prentice. And today, I'm honored to be joined by Jeff James, President of Capital Security Consultants, and also the Director of Security at Seneca Valley School District. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Seth.
Jeff, we'll take time later in the conversation to learn about Capital Security Consultants, but I wanted to know, how did you become interested in security and protecting people?
Well, it's much like you'll hear many people who go into law enforcement. Since I was a kid, I knew I only ever wanted to do two things. I either wanted to be a teacher or be in law enforcement. So I went to Clarion University. I got my teaching degree, and I was teaching English at Franklin Regional School District. Taught for about 6 years, and I became at that time acquainted with a Secret Service agent who put the bug in my ear about applying to the Secret Service. And at that point, I said, they'll never hire me. I don't have a military or law enforcement background. But what I didn't know at the time was, that's not all the Secret Service wants. They want an intentionally diverse workforce. They want people from all walks of life and all backgrounds. So under his encouragement, I applied. The application process took about 1.5 years. And then in September of 1996, I got a call and I went to training, and I went from being a teacher to being a Secret Service agent.
Well, it isn't every day that I've had the opportunity to talk to someone that's worked with the Secret Service. So talk to us about the change. So you went from being a teacher to help educate, the leaders of tomorrow, to you're protecting the leader of the country.
Yeah, it was it was a transition. But when I went to training, about half my class was former military and former law enforcement, but the other half were guys and gals just like me. They had been, they worked on Wall Street. They were accountants. We had one fellow who was, he wasn't in my training class, but I knew one fellow who was actually a physician. That was his family's line. His great grandfather was a doctor. His grandfather, his father, and he went to medical school, but he always had this yearning to be in law enforcement. So he was actually a physician who was hired. So when I was able to get there and figure out that there were at least half of the people who were like me, who never really had that background, it certainly eased things. But it was also something I was very, very excited to do and very comfortable doing. Like I said, I had the desire since I was a kid to be in law enforcement, but what I really embraced was the mission. Secret Service not only protects the president and vice president, but we also have their families. We protect all foreign heads of state that visit the United States. We protect former presidents. And usually in a time like now, if it wasn't whittled down, we'd have several presidential candidates that we'd be protecting as well. But this election election cycle, I should say, has whittled it down pretty quickly. I don't know if it's due to the pandemic or just due to some early decision making on both parties, especially the Democratic side, to decide that former Vice President Biden's going to be the man, right away. But so we had these missions, and they all had to surround this idea of protecting and combining that with the fact that I'm just a huge history lover. To live in Washington D.C. for almost 2 decades and be around history as it happened, and not just with the president, but also all these foreign heads of state who come to the United States. So I got to see the Pope, and I got to see Vladimir Putin and Boris Yeltsin and Robert Mugabe. So all the good leaders and all the bad leaders that came, you get to see them all. So it was I just consider myself blessed and fortunate in a lot of ways, not just to be able to be around those people, but the experiences I've gotten ahead. I mean, very simply, the fact that, for 22 years of my life, they just let me walk into the White House. When I think about it, I still get chills. And I know that sounds hokey, but it's absolutely true.
That's incredible. I'm guessing one part, or probably a large part of that, is you have to be mentally prepared from the minute you walk in to the minute you walk out each day. So is that a completely different mindset than what you would have as a normal civilian?
Yeah, I think, and I don't think this would be unique to the Secret Service. I think it's across all of law enforcement that you get a sense of being aware of your surroundings all the time, and not that, you know, that's it's like you see in the movies where those guys that are like, oh, I can't turn it off. No, I mean, you can certainly go to a restaurant and relax, but there's a situational awareness that comes with spending all of your working days looking for bad guys. There is part of that that bleeds into your personal life, but when you are right with someone you're protecting, again, whether it's the president of the United States or whether it's a foreign head of state that no one may have ever heard of. First of all, there's the incredible responsibility that you have that won't allow you to drop your guard. But second of all, that's why we're there. That's what we train for. And you really need to hold up your end of the bargain. Part of it is if the area I'm responsible for is right in front of me and there's another agent who's behind me, there's that trust there too, that if I hear commotion from behind me, I don't ever have to turn around. A, because I don't want to abandon the area I'm supposed to be, I'm responsible for, but B, because I know that agent behind me, that he or she's going to be able to handle whatever situation they're dealing with. But it is, one of the things I always tell people is you have to go back to President Reagan defeating Walter Mondale to get the last landslide victory in a presidential election. And we've had several in our lifetime where the candidate who lost the popular vote actually became president. Mm-hmm. So we were very aware all the time that every time the president left the White House, half the people who were putting eyes on him didn't want him to be president. And they could fake it all they want. They could hold up a sign and cheer and clap until that last minute when they launched their attack. So yeah, that was part of it. And as much as we complained about boring days were good once in a while. And the one thing we always complained about is if the president didn't leave the White House, like say he spent all day in the Oval Office, we had 4 posts in the West Wing that surround the Oval Office. And if that's all you did for your whole shift, we called it ring around the Oval, because you would just move from one post to the next. But then you'd go home and you'd be like, well, a boring day today wasn't too bad. So,
well, let's get into that. So your experience inside and outside of the White House, what did you actually look forward to more? And was there something different about each that offered something for you that you just loved doing?
Yeah, there were, much of it was the best and worst all wrapped into one. So one of the things we did was wherever the president was going to go, we would send an advance team out. Domestically, we'd send a team out a week ahead. Internationally, it would be at least 2 weeks ahead. So I never really traveled as a kid. I grew up in very humble means. We didn't travel at all. I was never on an airplane until I was an adult. So everywhere I went, unless it was like New York where we were going all the time, just about everywhere I went was the first time I went there. So it was when you get on the advanced teams, it was great to have these experiences of seeing new cities. I loved getting out, working with fellow law enforcement agencies wherever we would go, and the responsibility of setting up the security. So making the bubble that the president was going to walk into when he got out of the limousine or off of Air Force One as safe as we could make the White House was a great thrill. But being the person who was traveling with him that day, if that's what your assignment was, that was just as exciting too. And then all the things that happened at the White House were exciting. From the state dinners where you're seeing these foreign heads of state to every time the Penguins would come and every time the Steelers would, and even if it was a team you hated, it was excited to see. All the NCAA champions would come and they'd get their day. So, and then the entertainers, and so it was all exciting. The only bad part is none of it was 9 to 5. So there was some irregularity. The travel, every time I was gone, I was away from the wife and kids. So that takes its toll on you in certain ways. So. When I say that it was the best and worst, there were parts of it that were just incredible, but then there were parts when, and I'll give you the example of when President Bush was going for election the second time and he was running against John Kerry. Mm-hmm. I left my house August 8th of that year, and the night of the election was only the 6th night I was back in my house. So
Wow.
it was August, September, October, and the first week of November that I was I was gone the entire time. Um, so yeah, that's the bad, but then there was plenty of good that went with it too. So
Were there any, could be a leader, could be a celebrity, was there anyone that just walked into the White House and it might have been their first time there and they're just like in total amazement of, here I am?
yeah, everybody. Um,
Okay.
it was really like that. Yeah, whether it was a Hollywood personality or a musical entertainer who would oftentimes come for the events in the East Room, or another foreign head of state, they all had um, that moment of like, holy cow, this is the White House. And I'll tell you, I I still got it myself up until the very end of my career. In fact, I relished it more as I knew my career was coming toward an end. Those were the times I relished it the most because I knew these were the last few times I was going to be there. And even on when I was on the president's detail and I'd be on a midnight shift, um, I would go. We'd have, you'd hold your post, and then every couple hours you'd have a half-hour break, and you'd catch up on paperwork or you'd get something to eat. And I would go. There's one room on the floor, ground floor of the White House. It's the library, and in a case on the wall there is the sword that George Washington carried during the Revolutionary War. And I would go, and sometimes I just look at it and I say, wow, I'm a dumb, an inch above poor kid from Pittsburgh, and here I am in the White House looking at George Washington's sword. And it was really my small version of the American dream. And like I said, just so blessed and fortunate to have experiences like that.
That's awesome. Hey, do you have another memory maybe you could share with the listeners that you truly cherish the heart from, your time with the Secret Service?
Yeah, a lot of it, while much of it not comes down, much of it is related to the experience of the mission and loving the mission and being around the president, how exciting that was. Some of my fondest memories deal with the camaraderie that I had with my fellow agents and our fellow uniform division officers. And I've told this story before, but I don't mind telling it again. My wife is in the pharmaceutical industry, and several years ago, my father was getting toward the end of his life, and I was driving up from Washington D.C. To Pittsburgh. I had a couple of days off, and I was going to come up and spend them with my dad. Well, I got about halfway back to Pittsburgh from Washington D.C., and this was, I believe, 2008, and my wife was at Johns Hopkins Hospital visiting doctors as part of her normal day, and a gunman went into the hospital and opened fire, and I couldn't get hold of her, so I called my office we have a duty desk that runs 24 hours a day that handles all the things that come in, and agent answered the phone, and I said to her, I recognized her voice. I said, "Hey, Emily, do you guys have any intelligence on what's going on up in Johns Hopkins? Because my wife is up there working today." And her immediate response was, "All right, we'll get guys rolling that way. We'll grab her and we'll get her out of there." And it's like, holy cow, like just so humbling, to work with people that, what should have been my mission to go rescue my wife became their mission. And it was, it still today chokes me up a little bit and makes me miss that. As far as dealing with the people we protect, a lot of what's interesting is being able, we see behind the curtain. We see these people at their best and their worst. And the one thing I will tell you is they're all, like these presidents, for the most part, were all regular guys once everything got turned off. President Obama and President Bush, I think, were very much alike in spite of their differing political parties. And I think we're seeing that now that their families have become friends, now that they're both close friends, now that they're both out of office. But they were both, they both love their wives, love their kids, love their dogs, sports lovers, just in a lot of ways, very regular guys. And, neither of them wanted to be away from their wives, very often if they didn't have to. And I know President Obama wanted to be home as much as he could just to help Sasha and Malia with homework. And President Bush's daughters were older, but in constant contact with our people about, their welfare. And if I have to judge people, I'm going to judge them positively that way, because that, what I just described is me. I want to be around my wife. I love my kids, I love sports. So, so yeah, in that part, for better or worse, seeing behind that curtain, the one thing I will say is that, in a lot of ways, their struggle to be regular people wore on them as much as anything else. So the second floor of the White House is the private residence of the first family. And we didn't go in there unless we were called in, or unless there was some kind of emergency and we had to go in and evacuate. And that was the only place they truly had privacy. So once they left that second floor, there were, guys like me, there was press, there was White House staff. So I tell people all the time, imagine the second floor of your White House, of your house, is the only place you can go and get privacy. And as soon as you walk out of there, people are going to be taking your picture and listening to everything you say. It's quite a fishbowl to live in. So.
Yeah, that has to be difficult. I can't even imagine it. But you actually bring up a point of, protecting your kids, and you had the opportunity to be the liaison to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. How was that experience, and how did it prepare you for the role you currently have today?
Well, it's a mission that not many people know the Secret Service does. So the background is that when the Omnibus Crime Bill was passed in 1994, Congress mandated that the Secret Service would lend its forensic capabilities to any law enforcement agency that requested them dealing with a crime against a child, whether it was a child homicide, child pornography, child abuse, sexual assault, things like that. And we were incredibly involved in it. In fact, just to give you an idea of one of the assets we provided was the polygraph exam. So if you had a child who made an outcry that they were being assaulted, and the person who was accused was denying it, I could send a polygraph examiner out to polygraph the adult. We didn't polygraph children. In my last year at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the Secret Service did over 450 polygraph exams just related to that mission. And it's a great asset, not just for proving the outcry of the child, but also for preventing the false outcry. If you have a bitter divorce and one parent convinces the child to say that the other parent assaulted them, we're able to figure that out, because that's a life-changing accusation. That person's going to go to prison. They're going to be branded a sex offender the rest of their lives. So that's a big deal. And the other thing that helps me as a father in a lot of ways, and dealing with a situation up at Seneca, is learning about all these tools and all the techniques that predators use to lure children. And it's not just, the internet is the new, hey kid, do you want some candy? Very few, it used to be when I was young, there was no other way to get to a child except to approach them. Now there's so many ways to get to kids. And as part of my business, I'll talk about later, one of the things I do, and one of the things I did when I was in that position with the Secret Service, was get out and do presentations to parents about how do you protect your child in this day and age of technology. And I tell people, I won't judge you as a parent, because I am so far from perfect. I'm impatient at times. I make bad decisions, but the one way I will judge you as a parent is if you don't know what your kids are doing online. So my 14-year-old daughter, I'm in her phone. My wife is in her phone. We know her passwords. My 10-year-old son, we just got him a phone because he's playing sports, and we just need to keep in touch, but we're going through their phones, and my wife links them to her iPad so she can just see what kind of activity, because that's how a bad guy's going to get to your kid, through the chat rooms, through gaming, through Snapchat. So now when I have parents, how it's prepared me for my role here is at Seneca Valley, is when parents come to me now and have these questions, I can give them legitimate answers, instead of having to say, oh, that's something I'm really not familiar with, because it's a concern for everybody. And what it leads to is, these bad guys get on, they entice these kids, they find the kids who don't have parental oversight, or the kids that could sneak out of the house. And next thing you know, it leads to a huge problem that we have, whether people want to think it's not happening in the suburbs or not, is child sex trafficking. these young men and women get lured out, and next thing you know, they're in a situation they can't find their way out of. And it is happening, we know, throughout Western Pennsylvania, and there's several groups, the Servo Project and folks like that who are working to combat it in conjunction with law enforcement. But it is a problem, and that's that first step of finding that contact with that child somewhere online to groom them and lure them is the first step to it. So if you can find a way to keep your child from falling into that spiral, just by monitoring what they do online, you might save them from a horrific situation.
Is there a certain app? Would it be TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat? Is there something that they learn that they can break through to get access to kids and and adults, because we're seeing it with adults too?
Yeah.
And it's just an easy weight van out there to pull someone in.
Yes and no. Yes, that's how they do it, but no one app is worse than the others. So I would interview these bad guys when we catch them, and they would tell me that they'd get on all these apps, and they don't do anything backdoor technologically. They just get on the app, they make up a false profile saying they're a 14-year-old boy, a 14-year-old girl. They start chatting, and the one fellow told me that he'll get in gaming chat rooms, and he'll send out 100 messages a night, and he'll engage with the kids. And if a kid said to him, "Hey, it's 9 o'clock or 9:30 or 10, I got to shut my computer off and go to bed," they said they would never deal with that child again. But the kids who, again, I mentioned earlier, lack of parental oversight, could stay up till 2 a.m. and texting, and eventually he's going to convince them to sneak out and meet up. Those were the kids he would target. So yeah, I mean, my recommendation to everybody is your computer or your laptop needs to be in a common area of your home. You shouldn't let your child be up in their room by themselves with their phone or their laptop, especially at night. And if you let them do it, like if you say, all right, you want to go up and watch some shows, go ahead. But certainly at bedtime, all that stuff gets shut off and put somewhere where you know where it is, so they're not, that some criminal isn't trying to connect with them that way.
Has there been anything that you found besides this that might be successful? Would it be a Wi-Fi stopper for internet after a certain hour? Maybe a blocker so that the kids can't do anything after 10 p.m.
So limiting the I know every phone now has a screen time limitations.
Mm-hmm.
So those are good. You can shut your Wi-Fi off, but the kids, if they have the phone, they're still just communicating over the cell tower. It's just I think just so much easier. And it's what our family does, is just that, hey, all that stuff gets put on the kitchen counter when you go to bed, and that's where it stays. So that way, you know where it is. If they, I guess they could sneak down and get it, but that physical separation from it, I think even mentally creates the idea in the child that, okay, that's done for the day and I'm not going back to it.
And I do think, heck, even, we offer a product that you can control that through a phone. So I do think, more and more companies are coming out there with ways to help not only the parent, but just to give you a peace of mind more than anything.
Yeah, and what you do through Armstrong, those are great tools, especially if it's a situation where, say the parents work late and they're not home to make sure that child turns that phone off and puts it on the counter. The tools they can use through your service to make sure it's shut off. Yeah, that's incredibly beneficial if they can't be there.
Jeff, I did promise earlier in the show, we got to talk about your business. So what is Capital Security Consultants? Okay,
well, Capital Security Consultants is a consulting firm that I started 2 years ago. And we really have, we have several prongs to what we do. One is that we do risk and threat assessments. So if someone has a business, large or small, we come out and we essentially just look at the property and the setup through the eyes of the bad guy. And I say, all right, if I was going to break in, if I was going to try to take what you have, if I was going to assault one of your employees, this is how I do it and this is where I do it. And we recommend mitigations to put in place. Now, we don't really put those mitigations in place. Like if I would say like, that you need more lighting in this area, this parking lot's too dark. We don't do that. We just make the recommendations. And we also do it for private homes. We've had a couple prominent people in the Pittsburgh area ask us to come out to their home and take a look at things. So that's one thing we do. We also do self-defense instruction. If you just want a basic, what we focus on is what are the situations, the bad situations people get themselves in most. And it's different for men and women because attackers attack men and women differently. And it's about a 2-hour class where we teach that. And it's not one of the things where we say, hey, this one's free, but if you sign up for 3 months, you can. So it's a 1-2-hour class. I do invite anyone who takes one of my classes is welcome to come back to any subsequent class as a refresher at no charge. But it's a 2-hour class. It's just going to give you the tools to get out of that situation. Give yourself that 30 seconds just to get away, because that's the biggest part. Is bad guys don't want to fight. If you show resistance, and we've seen it a million times. If you show resistance and show you're not going to be an easy target, and you can just get that 30 seconds to get away, they're rarely going to chase you, and even the fighting back that they're going to do is usually short-lived. Another big component that we have is we do training on how to survive an active shooter scenario. We've done this with businesses. I've spoken at a couple conferences. And I lean on my training from my old job. Like all the Secret Service has ever done is counter an active shooter. We've just always done it with, we were around the target. So I study every active shooter. We just had this week the anniversary of the shootings in Dayton and El Paso. And I study all of those and I look at the trends, and it's remarkable that about 85%, I'm sorry, in all these scenarios, there's about 85% similarity in all of them. There's little differences here and there, but from that 85%, we can create best practices that are going to help you survive, whether it's a workplace shooting, an open air shooting like we saw in Las Vegas, or if it's in a situation like a school. So that's a big part of what we do. And then I also do, leaning on my the experience I got at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, I come out to community groups and sometimes neighborhoods will just get their families together and I'll do talks to kids about, I don't know that I like the term, but we talk a little bit about stranger danger. But we also talk about, 82% of children who are sexually assaulted by someone they know. So while stranger danger is a part of it, we also teach them about, hey, if someone you know is hurting you, even if they say, if you tell, I'll do something to your mom or dad, or if you tell, I'll kill you, something that drastic, we make sure we plant the seed in the child's head that if someone's hurting you, you got to tell. And then I have a separate talk that I do that's a little more fact-based and a little more frank. It's really not appropriate for the kids, but I do it with the parents. And I talk about, how to protect your children in the real world as well as virtually when they're online. And so those are the major prongs of what we do. If anyone would care to, they could check out the website. It's capitol-security.com. It's all former, I partner with a couple, it's my company, but I employ a couple former Secret Service agents as well. So I hope God forgives me for sounding this arrogant, but I think you're really getting the best of the best when we come out and do this training and this instruction. And we were even certified by the Pennsylvania Department of Education and the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency to do risk and threat assessments at schools. That mission is on the state police. The state police have their risk and vulnerability assessment team, but there's 521 school districts in Pennsylvania and their backlogs. So the state said, we'll get some private contractors to help out, and we were fortunate enough to be certified. So, I always tell people, who would you rather have do the threat assessment at your kid's school than a bunch of Secret Service agents? So, if there's any influential parents or board members out there, feel free to give us a shout. We'd be glad to come out and do that for you.
This is phenomenal. Do you have a target of, an age group that you're looking for? Or is this really open because of all the different classes you offer? It's open to almost every age group.
Yeah, well, the self-defense, I usually tell people, unless the child's about 12 years old, um, some of the stuff might not be ineffective. For kids younger than that, the best thing for them, and I tell parents this, and I actually demonstrated it at some of the talks I do. I can get on YouTube and show you videos that are just heartbreaking of someone who comes up and takes a child's hand and says, "Hey, your mom sent me to get you," and they walk off with the child, and that child's never seen again or never seen alive. But I can show you just as many videos of a bad guy who tries to pick up a child, and that kid starts screaming and kicking, and that bad guy drops that kid and runs the other direction. So my instruction to kids who are younger than 12 or so is just, hey, scream and kick and make as much noise as possible. Make yourself heavy, and because really they're a child. That's going to be their only defense. But bad guys don't like attention. They don't like noise. They don't want people looking. So it's heartbreaking when you see a child just walk off with someone because they're so trusting. And that's what's sad is oftentimes the mistake we make is we tell kids, respect your elders. And they do that. So when an older person walks up and says, "Hey, your mom sent me to get you," they believe it. What we need to be telling our children is, respect your elders, yes, but if someone makes you afraid, you make sure everyone around you knows you're afraid. Or if someone's trying to hurt you, you make sure everybody knows. But yeah, as far as the other services go, yeah, it could be open to all age groups.
Anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today, Jeff?
Just that I appreciate the time so much. I'm humbled and flattered that you asked me to be part of this, and just how much I appreciate the time.
Well, we will, of course, put your information for your site and contact information in the show notes so that people can visit your site and hopefully be in touch to have you out or be a participant in one of your classes soon. And I can't thank you enough for being with us today, and thank you for everything you do to keep everyone safe.
Oh, I'm honored to do it. Thank you.
For Armstrong in the Loop podcast, I'm Seth Prentice, keeping you in the loop. Are you enjoying Armstrong in the Loop podcast? Great news! All past and current episodes are available on popular streaming apps and websites. Search Armstrong in the Loop podcast and subscribe today.